"Get your filthy hands off that board." The voice sliced through the silence like a blade. Maya Williams flinched, the handle of her mop slipping slightly from her gloved hands. She had just finished wiping down the glass wall of a conference room on the 27th floor of Orion Systems, a sleek tech company nestled in the heart of downtown Houston. Midnight had long passed. Everyone should have been gone, everyone except the cleaning crew. But someone had stayed behind. A tall man in a wrinkle-free white shirt and sleek glasses stood at the doorway. He stared at her, half surprised, half furious, as if she'd set off an alarm inside him. His badge read Jason Monroe, lead systems engineer. Just moments earlier, Maya had been on her knees, scrubbing coffee stains off the polished tile. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of fluorescent lights overhead. As she wiped under the long glass table, she glanced up at the whiteboard glowing faintly in the dark. A cascade of code lines covered the surface formulas, logic gates, machine learning loops. It was beautiful, messy, intricate. Then she saw it. Nestled in a conditional loop-on misplaced Boolean operator, a logic flaw so subtle most people would skim right past it. But Maya didn't. She knew that structure. She remembered the same bug pattern from a competition she once won back in high school. Her mind clicked through the steps. This was it. The error she'd overheard the engineers whispering about in frustration for the past 2 weeks. "We're bleeding cash," someone had muttered. "We can't launch with this flaw." Maya stood still, one hand gripping the mop, the other tightening around the dry cloth she used for wiping fingerprints. She shouldn't. She couldn't. But she could. Her fingers itched for the dry erase marker left carelessly on the ledge beneath the board. She hesitated. Her reflection in the glass stared back. Janitor's uniform, gloves, badge. No credentials. No permission. What if she was wrong? What if this little correction made things worse? What if? Her mother's voice rose in the back of her mind. "Even if you sweep floors, baby, sweep them like you built the building." With trembling fingers, she reached for the marker. A quick, clean stroke. A bracket realigned. A sequence shortened. She stepped back and stared. Not for them, but for her. And that's exactly when Jason walked in and saw the marker still in her hand. His face darkened in an instant. "What do you think you're doing?" he snapped, striding across the room. Maya froze. "You've got no idea what you're touching," he spat. "You think just because you can scribble a few lines, you're suddenly part of the team." His voice rose, tight with barely suppressed rage. But it wasn't just at her Maya saw it. The sleepless eyes, the rumpled papers he dropped on the table. This wasn't about her. Not entirely. Jason had been struggling with this bug for weeks. Leadership breathing down his neck, investors growing impatient, and now here she was, a janitor, making it look effortless. "You think it's funny, don't you?" he barked. "All of us busting our asses while you wipe windows, and suddenly you know better?" "I was just cleaning," she said quickly, voice small, even though it was the truth. The lights were still on. "I thought." "You thought?" he snapped. "You thought you'd play genius and make things worse? This project is bigger than anything you'll ever touch with that damn mop." He snatched a tissue from the table and scrubbed the correction off the board, his hand trembling. "Just go back to whatever it is you do," Jason muttered bitterly. Maya turned without another word. Her sneakers squeaked slightly against the polished tile as she pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway. Her heart was pounding not from fear, but from something deeper. Frustration, shame, a flicker of guilt, and something she hadn't felt in a long time, the sting of lost potential. She made her way to the elevator, her reflection in the brushed steel doors showing a woman who barely looked her 22 years. Hair tied in a frizzy bun, Orion janitorial badge crooked on her chest. Behind her eyes lived memories of abandoned dreams, coding competitions won in high school, late nights with her mother cheering her on during community college, the full ride to Howard University, and the slow unraveling that followed when her mother's illness took everything. The elevator chimed. Maya didn't press the button. She stood still, watching her reflection. That same sentence echoed again. "Even if you sweep floors, baby, sweep them like you built the building." She closed her eyes, then looked down at the faint smudge of blue ink still on her fingertips. It wasn't about being right. It wasn't about being seen. But if what she saw on that board was real, if that tiny correction could help, then maybe, just maybe, it was worth writing down. Not for them, But for her, the elevator doors closed without her. The elevator doors reopened 2 floors down, but Maya didn't step out. She stood still, unmoving, gripping the handle of her cleaning cart. The silence inside the elevator felt heavier than the polished metal walls, and the faint hum of the descending car sounded like the last breath of something precious slipping away. Her fingertips still tingled from where the marker had rested. That one small correction, it had felt so right, like muscle memory coming back after years of silence. But now, shame clung to her skin like the faint chemical scent of the floor polish. Jason's voice echoed in her head. You think just because you can scribble a few lines. Scribble, that's what he thought it was. A scribble. The elevator reached the ground floor, and Maya stepped out slowly, pushing her cart past the marble lobby. The night security guard, Mr. Douglas, gave her a nod from behind the desk, but she barely saw him. Her feet moved automatically, carrying her toward the employee locker room. Each step tapped against the tile like an accusation. She reached her locker and peeled off her gloves. Her hands were trembling. She sat on the bench and stared at them, palms up, as if they belonged to someone else. These hands had written thousands of lines of code once. They'd built an award-winning recommendation engine for a community college project that made headlines back home. They'd fixed her mother's 4 when the nurse was late, had cooked dozens of frozen dinners through cold nights, had wiped her mother's forehead when the fever came back. Now, they pushed mops and carried trash bags. Maya reached into her bag and pulled out her old notebook. The corners were frayed, the pages smudged with time and fingerprints. Inside were sketches, ideas, bits of algorithms that had popped into her head over the years. Some complete, some fragmentary, none shared. She flipped to a blank page and stared at it. Her phone buzzed on old, scratched model that barely held a charge. One text from her roommate. Don't forget Mom's meds tomorrow. I'll cover morning shift. Maya closed the notebook. Not now. She changed into her street clothes and left through the back door, the cold night air greeting her like a reminder. The world out here didn't care who fixed what inside that gleaming glass tower. The bus stop across the street was deserted. She sat down on the bench, arms crossed against the wind. It would be 20 minutes before the next one came. 20 minutes with her thoughts. Jason had been angry, yes, but there was something else in his voice. Desperation, panic. She had seen it in the way his hands shook when he wiped her correction off the board. He hadn't known how to fix it. She did, and that knowledge sat inside her now like a stone in her gut. Heavy, cold, real. 2 days ago, she had overheard a conversation between him and the CTO. Something about a delay in the rollout, potential investor loss, the algorithm malfunctioning in live testing. The engineers were stuck, unsure what was causing the inconsistent predictions. But she had spotted it in seconds. Maya rubbed her face, exhaustion creeping into her bones. She hadn't slept well in weeks. Between the night shifts and her mother's late medications, she was always half awake, half running. But tonight, something in her had awakened. The bus pulled up with a groan. She climbed aboard and took her usual seat in the back. The driver, a graying man with warm eyes, nodded at her through the rearview mirror. You're late tonight. She nodded back, too tired to reply. The city lights blurred past her window as the bus pulled away. She watched them, her mind drifting back to Howard University. She remembered the thrill of walking into her first computer science class, the smell of old books and fresh ambition. She remembered Professor Lintonstern, fair who had once looked at one of her project proposals and said, "You think like someone who understands not just what code does, but what it shouldn't do." He had called her a natural. Her mother had been so proud. "My baby's gonna build the future," she'd told everyone in the neighborhood. Maya had smiled, embarrassed but secretly warmed. Until the hospital visits piled up, the bills overtook the scholarships, and the future started to look like bleach and mop handles. The bus jolted to a stop. Her neighborhood looked the same. Quiet, dim. A few porch lights flickering on rundown houses. She walked quickly, her footsteps echoing on cracked pavement. At home, her roommate was asleep on the couch, television still glowing softly. Maya tiptoed to her mother's room and peeked in. The old woman was asleep, breathing evenly. Maya sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, listening to the faint hum of the oxygen machine. Her mother's hand twitched slightly under the blanket. A memory surfaced her mother's fingers, tracing the edge of a scholarship letter with pride, whispering, "God doesn't give everyone brilliance, baby. So when he gives it to you, you use it." She whispered back now, "I tried, Mama. I really did." If you understand how Maya felt in that moment, give her a like. And don't forget to comment where you're watching this from. Someone nearby might be watching it too. Her eyes welled, but she didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, she went to the kitchen and pulled out her notebook again. She redrew the structure from the whiteboard, line by line. This time, she didn't hesitate. She wrote it all. Not just the fix, but the whole structure, the logic behind the correction, the reason it mattered. By the time the sun was rising, she had 3 pages filled. She stared at them for a long moment. Then she tore them out carefully and placed them in a folder, labeled only with her initials. M.W. She didn't know what she was going to do with it yet. She didn't know if she'd ever get the chance to explain it to someone who mattered. But she knew one thing. Jason Monroe might have power. He might have the title, the office, the suit, but she had the answer. And that, for now, would have to be enough. 2 days passed. Maya kept her head down, pushing her cart past the same white walls and glass offices every night, pretending nothing had happened. But inside, everything had shifted. Jason no longer acknowledged her. He didn't glare or bark orders anymore. He simply walked past her as if she were air. But others had started to notice. Luis, a thin, soft-spoken intern who worked late hours, had glanced at her oddly the last 2 nights. Not unkindly, curiously. As though he knew something, she avoided his gaze. Each night, Maya passed the same conference room, but she never looked at the whiteboard again. She didn't need to. The correction she'd made was long gone, wiped clean by Jason's angry hand. But she could still see it in her Mendivari loop, every bracket. The flaw. The fix. Her fingers itched to write it all again, but she didn't. Until tonight. She was in that room again. Alone. It was just past midnight. The hallway lights were dimmed, the company asleep in its high-rise cage. Outside the window, downtown Houston shimmered under a blanket of orange haze. Inside, Maya stood with a mop in her hand, frozen in place. She stared at the whiteboard. They'd rewritten the code. She recognized the lines Jason's work. It looked cleaner now, organized. But the core flaw remained. They hadn't fixed it. They hadn't even seen it. And worse, they were trying to launch anyway. She knew this because she had overheard a phone call earlier that night, Jason whispering into his cell phone near the break room. "I don't care," he'd said, voice clipped. "We're pushing the update Monday. No more delays. We bury it and hope the next patch hides the cracks." Maya had stopped breathing when she heard it. They were hiding the flaw. She stepped closer to the whiteboard, heart pounding. Her fingers drifted to the marker again. It was still their SM1 she'd used before. Blue, fine tip. She hesitated. This time, the fear was different. It wasn't about being seen or reprimanded. It was about what would happen if she didn't write it. She pulled the cap off and, with swift precision, rewrote the fix. But this time, she didn't stop there. Beneath the corrected function, she drew an arrow. Then, in careful block letters, she wrote, "This line introduces recursive misclassification due to unresolved null handling." She stepped back. Let them erase it again if they wanted. But this time, it wouldn't disappear without someone wondering who wrote it. She turned to leave and stopped. Luis was standing just outside the door. His arms were folded, and his eyes were wide not in judgment, but awe. He looked at the board, then at her, then back again. "I knew it was you," he said, voice low, almost reverent. Maya opened her mouth, unsure what to say, but Luis stepped forward, gently, as if approaching something sacred. "I saw your correction the other night, before it was wiped. It solved the recursion loop." He paused, swallowing hard. "No one's been able to do that for weeks." She glanced away. "I shouldn't have touched it." "No," he said firmly, "you should have. That loop's been bleeding runtime efficiency since beta. We were missing something simple, but none of us could see it." "You did." She didn't know how to respond. It had been so long since someone saw her, not the janitor, not the girl who didn't finish school, but the coder. "I didn't mean to get involved," she said quietly. "I just saw it." Luis nodded. stepping closer. I'm not going to tell anyone, but I need to ask, did you hear what Jason said about launching? She nodded slowly. Luis exhaled. This could backfire. On the company, on clients, on you, if they think you're leaking anything. I'm not leaking anything, Maya said, steel creeping into her voice. I fixed a mistake, that's all. Luis gave a crooked smile. A big mistake. And you fixed it with a mop in one hand. Maya's lips twitched, almost smiling, but the weight in her chest was still there. Luis stepped closer. Why don't you write it down? Everything. Not just that one fix. Explain the logic, the bigger structure. If you have it, document it, so there's proof. I already did, she said, surprising herself. At home, in a folder. He nodded, impressed. You're smarter than half the people here. She didn't reply. Compliments were hard to absorb when the rest of your life was made of silence. I'm going to keep working late, he said. If you ever want help getting that code in front of someone who'll actually look at it, I'll be around. Then he turned and left, leaving Maya alone again in the room. She stared at her writing on the board one last time before packing up her supplies. Later that night, back in her bedroom, she opened her notebook again. This time, she didn't write more code. She wrote something else. Sometimes the people building the system can't see the cracks because they never stand beneath them. She stared at the sentence for a long time, then circled it. The next night, she planned to leave a copy of her notes in the break room printer tray anonymously. But for now, she closed the book and let herself feel something new. Not hope, not yet, but something like it. Maya stood in front of the company's break room printer, heart thudding in her chest. The room was empty, just the hum of the old vending machine and the click-click of the coffee maker cycling through a rinse. It was almost 2 a.m., the perfect hour. No one should be up here except the ghosts of half-finished projects and last-minute regrets. She slipped a USB drive into the port on the side of the office computer and selected the file. Her document, 12 pages of clean, annotated code, diagrams, logic flows. A cover page with no name, just the title, Undocumented Errors in Orion's Adaptive Prediction Model, a silent audit. She watched the pages slide out of the tray one by one. Every sheet felt heavier than paper. She had poured hours into that folder writing, revising, checking references, everything based on the flaw she had spotted. She had also included projections if the code launched as is. The model would fail in under a month under real-world pressure. It would not be catastrophic immediately, but slow, invisible bleeding, reputation damage, lawsuits, class action risk. And beneath it all, the truth. She gathered the stack and slipped it into a plain manila envelope. No markings. She placed it at the top of the stack of morning reports that would be reviewed by operations. Then she walked away. As she left the room, Luis appeared from behind the vending machine, sipping coffee from a chipped mug. You did it? He asked. She nodded. Luis tilted his head. You sure they'll see it? No, she said. But now it's out there. That's what matters. He watched her with that same quiet admiration, and for the first time in a long time, Maya didn't feel invisible. That morning, the envelope made its way quietly, unnoticed through the routine channels. By 9 a.m., it sat on the desk of Andrea Keller, the chief operating officer. She was a sharp woman in her early 50s, known for her unshakable expression and fondness for peppermint tea. When she flipped open the envelope, her brow furrowed. By page 3, she'd put down her mug. By page 7, she had buzzed her assistant. Get Jason in here. Now. Jason arrived 10 minutes later, tie askew, eyes red from another sleepless night. Andrea didn't look up. You've got something to explain. He blinked. Excuse me? She slid the printout toward him. He picked it up, read the title, and his face drained of color. His hands gripped the edge of the paper like it might explode. Where did this come from? He asked. I was about to ask you that, Andrea said. Is it legitimate? Jason didn't answer right away. He was reading, fast. His lips moved slightly with each line. The correction she had written on the board was there explained in detail, with consequences projected if left unresolved. It's not public documentation, he said carefully. That's obvious, Andrea replied. So who wrote it? Jason looked up slowly. I don't know. She raised an eyebrow. But they're right, aren't they? He hesitated, Then, yes. Andrea sat back in her chair. We've already scheduled a press event around this launch. Do you understand what would happen if this failure appeared in the wild? Jason didn't respond. His jaw was tight. Find out who wrote this, she said. If they're on staff, I want them in engineering by next week. He opened his mouth as if to object, but stopped. Is that going to be a problem? She asked. No, he said stiffly. Not at all. The next night, Maya arrived for her shift to find her badge didn't work at the usual entrance. Instead, a man in a suit was waiting for her near the side doors. Maya Williams? He asked. She froze. Yes? Come with me, please. Miss Keller would like a word. Inside the elevator, she clutched her cleaning gloves in both hands. Her mind ran wild. Had they traced the document? Had she crossed a line? Was she about to be fired? Sued? But when the elevator opened on the executive floor, the man simply gestured toward a conference room. Andrea Keller stood by the window, sipping tea. She turned slowly when Maya entered. I was hoping it was you, she said. Maya didn't speak. Andrea motioned to the chair. Please. Maya sat. I read your audit, Andrea said. It's exceptional. Not just the correction, but your clarity, your analysis. It's professional, advanced. Some of our own team couldn't catch that flaw. Maya's throat was dry. Thank you. Andrea studied her. You don't have a background here, no formal position, no access to that level of code. So I have to ask, how did you see what our team missed? Maya's hands tightened on the gloves. I used to study this. Before, I had to drop out, but I kept learning. Andrea nodded slowly. I don't care about your resume. What I care about is that you saw something no one else did and you cared enough to fix it. She walked to the table, opened a folder, and slid it toward Maya. I want you in R&D, starting next week. Entry level, yes, but real work. You'll be trained, paid accordingly. You'll have access. Maya stared at the offer letter. Her name was typed clearly at the top. She looked up. What about Jason? Andrea's voice cooled slightly. Jason is under review. Let's just say, leadership appreciates honesty and results. Maya exhaled, slowly, deeply. She stood. I'll accept. Andrea extended a hand. Welcome aboard, Miss Williams. As Maya left the room, her old badge still dangling from her belt, she didn't take the elevator down. She walked, step by step, down every floor, passing the glass walls, the meeting rooms, the blinking servers. She paused once outside the janitor's closet and smiled. Sometimes, the way up wasn't in the elevator. It was in the stairs you didn't think you were allowed to climb. Maya stepped into the research and development floor for the first time, not as a janitor, but as a junior engineer. Her new badge beeped smoothly at the scanner, and the door slid open like the beginning of a different story. Gone were the latex gloves and mop handles. Today, she carried a laptop bag on her shoulder and a quiet determination in her chest. The space looked different in the daylight. The high ceilings, glass panels, and rows of dual monitors had always seemed distant, designed for people with degrees, resumes, connections. But now, they belonged to her, too, at least in part. She arrived 20 minutes early, unsure if that was too eager or just right. No one had said exactly what to wear, so she'd chosen something clean, understated: a navy blouse, black slacks, her mother's old watch clasped around her wrist like a shield. At 8:01, a woman approached her desk. Short, brown hair, wore her badge clipped to a lanyard decorated with tiny pixelated foxes. You're Maya? The woman asked. Maya stood. Yes. I'm Rena, tech lead. You'll shadow me for the first month. Mostly back-end work, some debugging. Occasionally you'll get thrown something wild just to see if you can swim. Maya nodded. I can swim. Rena grinned. Good answer. She gave Maya a quick tour of the floor. Coffee machine. Emergency exits. Server access terminals. A list of Slack channels. All standard. Yet the deeper Maya walked into this world, the more surreal it felt, like crossing an invisible barrier. By 9 a.m., Maya was seated at her workstation, setting up environments and installing tools. It was all familiar, like a long-forgotten language returning fluently to her fingertips. Rena stopped by again before lunch. Saw your code review notes on the Jenkins update. That was fast. It was mostly the file structure, Maya said. The conditional hooks were misaligned. Rena raised an eyebrow. You see that in one pass? I guess I have an eye for patterns. Rena smirked. Let me know if you see any in our payroll algorithm. I swear it rounds in favor of the vending machine. Later that afternoon, Maya overheard two engineers talking near the break room. Did you hear Keller pulled someone from janitorial into R&D? One said. No way. For real? Yeah. Apparently fixed a bug no one else saw. Damn. Maybe I should start hanging out by the mop closet. Maya didn't flinch. She didn't hide. She just refilled her water bottle and walked past them, letting the words slide off like rain on glass. She had nothing to prove anymore. She was here, but Jason Monroe hadn't been seen all day. She found herself looking for him in passing down hallways, near the main console rooms, even during a team sync-up. Nothing. His absence was loud, like someone had lowered the temperature of the entire building. Rena must have noticed, because as they walked back to their desks, she said quietly, Don't worry about Jason. I'm not, Maya replied too quickly. Rena smiled. He's not a villain. Just a man who couldn't see past his own fear. Happens a lot in this field. Maya didn't answer. That evening, she stayed late. The floor cleared out slowly. Screens dimmed. Chairs rolled back into desks. By 8 p.m., she was alone again. It felt familiar. The glow of the monitors. The hush of machines still whirring in the background. The kind of silence she had known well as a cleaner, but this time, she wasn't wiping away fingerprints. She was leaving some of her own. She opened her notebook and copied in a diagram she'd started the night before an improved branching logic for error handling under real-time loads. She wasn't assigned to that system, not yet, but she'd been thinking about it for weeks, since before they'd known her name. Footsteps behind her made her close the book quickly. She turned and there he was. Jason. No tia today. Shirt sleeves rolled. Eyes tired but alert. They stared at each other for a long beat. I heard you started this week, he said. I did. Jason nodded, glancing around. Quiet floor now. Gets that way after 7. He took a few slow steps toward her desk, hands in his pockets. I read the rest of your audit, he said. You were right. About everything. She didn't reply. I was angry that night, he continued. Angry because I'd spent weeks trying to fix what you saw in 10 seconds. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone, Maya said evenly. No, you didn't, he admitted. And I made it personal. That was wrong. Another pause. You'll do good work here, he added. Better than I did. She studied him for a moment. There was no sarcasm, no bite, just a tired man owning the weight of his pride. Thank you, she said finally. Jason nodded once, then turned to leave. But before he reached the elevator, he called back over his shoulder. Keep writing on those boards. You've got something most of us lost somewhere along the way. When he was gone, Maya turned back to her desk. She opened her notebook again. And this time, she didn't close it. She began to sketch out the framework for a diagnostic tool loan that would flag the exact type of pattern she'd spotted weeks ago. Not for glory, not for attention, just because it needed to exist. Outside the window, the city pulsed with quiet light. And inside, Maya began her real work. 3 weeks had passed since Maya stepped into R&D. Her badge no longer felt like a borrowed pass. It hung from her neck, like it belonged there because it did. She had learned the daily rhythms, the quirks of the internal servers, the unspoken rules of the engineering floor. She knew who brewed the strongest coffee, Rena, who always worked with headphones, Devin, and who quietly corrected others' code in the middle of the night without leaving their name, Luis. Of course, but beyond those daily patterns, Maya had started building something of her own. Every evening, after her scheduled tasks were done, she returned to that diagram in her notebook, a system-level diagnostic tool that could flag pattern flaws in predictive AI loops. What had begun as a sketch now stretched across multiple files, refined, tested, debugged. She called it Lens. The idea behind Lens was simple. AI systems often fail silently. They make decisions that appear functional on the surface, but degrade performance or accuracy over time. Lens would highlight those silent failures in real time, catching errors not through output, but through behavior, deviation subtle but detectable. She hadn't told anyone, not yet, not even Rena. One Friday evening, after most of the team had gone, Maya stayed late again. Her mother's health had stabilized for the moment, thanks to a new nurse who visited during the day, which gave Maya more time to focus. Still, she hadn't told her mom everything yet. Not the promotion, not the meetings, not the fact that for the first time in years, she was contributing to something that mattered. Tonight, she had decided to test Lens. She loaded a sandbox environment, seeded it with datasets, and pointed Lens at a pre-existing model used in customer segmentation. This model had been flagged months ago for underperformance, but no one had isolated why. Maya watched as Lens quietly parsed the code. 4 minutes later, it highlighted an inconsistency. She leaned in. A misalignment in recursive tagging. Tiny, consistent, invisible to human eye without exact metrics. Lens had caught it. Her breath caught in her throat. She double-checked the data, then ran it again. Same result. She stared at the screen, barely blinking. Then she did something bold, something that surprised even her. She packaged the results and sent them in an internal email to Rena with the subject line, "Tool prototype Lens, beta results attached." Then she sat back and waited. The next morning, she didn't hear anything. All day, no word. Rena didn't stop by her desk. Luis gave her a curious look around lunchtime but said nothing. Maya started to wonder if she had overstepped. Sent it too soon. Maybe it needed more polish. Maybe. At 4:46 p.m., a calendar invite popped into her inbox. Subject, Lens Review, Monday, 9 a.m. Vertical bar. Attendees, Keller, Rena, Connecticut O, Maya Williams. She stared at the screen. That was not a casual meeting. That was executive level. That weekend, Maya barely slept. She triple-checked her code, reran simulations, refined the documentation. She printed her notes and kept reading them like sacred text. On Sunday night, her mother noticed. "You're pacing," her mother said from the couch. Maya looked over, startled. "Am I? You only pace when your heart's too full to sit still." Maya smiled weakly. Something big is happening. Her mother looked at her more closely. "Good big?" Maya nodded. "I think so." Her mother reached out, and Maya took her hand. "Whatever it is, just remember you didn't get there because someone let you in. You got there because no one could stop you." Monday morning arrived too quickly. Maya dressed carefully. Same watch on her wrist. Hair pulled back neat. She walked into the glass conference room at 8:57. Rena was already there, sipping coffee. Andrea Keller arrived next, followed by CTO Richard Ellis, silver-haired, sharp-eyed. "Maya," he greeted. "Rena tells us you've built something interesting." Maya nodded. "Yes, sir. Let's see it." She plugged in her laptop, loaded Lens, and walked them through the test. Every sentence felt like a tightrope. She explained the logic, the triggers, the way Lens worked in the background, identifying silent logic drifts that typically went unnoticed. When she finished, no one spoke for several seconds. Then Andrea leaned forward. "You caught that with your system? That specific drift?" "Yes," Rena added. "It's not just accurate, it's elegant, lightweight, adaptive." Richard Ellis narrowed his eyes slightly. "What do you want to do with it?" Maya hesitated. "I want it to be used. Auditing tools like this could save companies like ours months of damage control. It could protect consumers from biased decisions. It could keep people honest." Richard leaned back. "It could also open us up to liability." Maya didn't flinch. "Or protect us from worse liability later." Andrea smiled. "I like her." Rena chuckled. "Told you." Richard finally nodded. "We'll greenlight a full prototype review. Assign 2 engineers. If it holds up, we present it to the board." The meeting ended 15 minutes later. As Maya stepped out of the conference room, Luis was waiting near the end of the hallway. He raised an eyebrow. "How'd it go?" She smiled this time without hesitation. "They're moving it forward." He grinned. "Of course they are. It works." That night, Maya walked past the janitor's closet on her way out. She paused. Inside, tucked into the corner, still sat her old cart mop, gloves, bucket. The badge with her name scratched halfway off still hung on the hook. She reached in, took the badge gently, and turned it over in her hand. Then she slipped it into her bag. Not to forget, but to remember exactly how far she'd come. Outside, the sky over Houston stretched wide and soft with twilight. And inside Maya Williams, Something had finally settled, not pride, not relief, but a quiet, anchored knowing. She had built something that mattered, and they had listened. The following week unfolded with a rhythm Maya had only dreamed about. Mornings filled with stand-up meetings, afternoons buried in code reviews and testing, evenings reviewing logs and making quiet adjustments to Lens. Her name had begun circulating among Teams whispers at first, then mentions in project threads, until it reached a place where even those she hadn't met yet seemed to nod in recognition when she passed. But with visibility came pressure. Lens had moved from side project to official prototype. Rena assigned 2 engineers, Lewis and a senior systems analyst named Franklin, to help Maya stress test it across legacy modules. Keller scheduled bi-weekly progress check-ins. Even Richard Ellis, who rarely said much beyond executive metrics, now sent notes of refinement, occasionally with a rare line of praise. Maya should have felt proud, but something tugged at her. A quiétude. It started when Franklin flagged an anomaly during testing. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, scrolling through logs on his second monitor. These API calls weren't flagged in the original audit. "What kind of calls?" Maya asked, leaning closer. Franklin pointed. "External routing attempts. Low level. Not dangerous on their own, but they're not supposed to be here." Maya narrowed her eyes. She recognized the syntax, old, tucked deep in the decisioning engine of one of Orion's first commercial AI models. "They've been buried in legacy layers," Franklin continued. "No one would see them unless they were tracing behavior manually. Or unless they had something like Lens," Maya said quietly. They kept digging. Within an hour, they found more. Redirect scripts that funneled partial user data through shadow endpoints, legal in structure, but ethically gray. Nothing in the code was technically wrong, but it pointed to a silent siphoning of data analytics. Someone had built in a ghost lane. And it had been running undetected for over a year. Rena was looped in immediately. She read the reports in silence, then looked up at Maya. "You realize what this could mean?" Maya nodded. "This wasn't an accident. Someone left these traces on purpose." Rena folded her arms. "This goes beyond just a tool now. You've uncovered something that could trigger internal audits, maybe even legal." Luis added, "If this gets out before the board sees it, someone might try to bury it." Maya didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, but because of clarity. Lens wasn't just about making systems smarter. It was making them honest. And the truth, she now understood, scared people more than failure ever could. The next morning, Keller called a closed-door meeting with Maya, Rena, and Richard Ellis. They sat in the same glass room where Maya had first demoed her code, only this time the tension was thick. Maya presented the findings. She laid out the logs, the inconsistencies, the implications. Rena backed her up. Franklin had sent an encrypted summary. When she finished, Richard sat back, hands steepled under his chin. "Do you know who introduced this code path?" he asked. Maya hesitated. "Not yet, but the file access logs narrow it down to 3 engineers, some of whom hasn't worked here in months." Richard's face darkened. "This could expose us to compliance risk. Major one. These calls align with partnerships that no longer exist. The board doesn't know." Keller glanced at Maya. "We wouldn't know either if it wasn't for her." Richard exhaled. "Lens is doing exactly what it was built to do." "So what now?" Maya asked. There was a long pause. Then Keller said, "We let it keep doing that." They scheduled a confidential internal investigation. Maya wasn't allowed to speak of the discovery outside her direct team. The project name Lens was quietly removed from the public-facing dev schedules and moved to an encrypted access channel. From the outside, it looked like Maya was just working on internal diagnostics. But inside, she was peeling back layers no one else dared touch. Each new week, Lens flagged more traces, some benign, others suspicious. Patterns emerged, outdated vendor code with expired security tokens, silent API calls redirecting anonymized behavior data to third-party archives. None of it illegal by strict terms. But none of it disclosed either. It painted a picture Maya hadn't expected. Not a company trying to deceive, but one too large, too layered, to see what it was becoming. One night, Rena sat beside her as they watched Lens flag a breach path in a training module. "This thing is more than code now," Rena said softly. "It's a mirror." Maya didn't respond. She was thinking of something her mother used to say when watching the news late at night. Sometimes the worst lies, her mother had whispered once, are the ones we agree to ignore. Lens was refusing to ignore them. Later that evening, as Maya prepared to leave, she received a message from Keller. Maya board presentation in 2 weeks. We want you to present Lens. Full access granted. Prepare accordingly. Maya stared at the message, frozen. She'd never spoken to the board, never even seen them. And now they wanted her to present the very tool that could change how the company saw itself. She closed her laptop, gathered her bag, and walked slowly through the darkened halls. The janitor cart was gone now, reassigned, but the closet still remained silent, dusty. She paused in front of it, hand resting gently on the door. She whispered, "I built something, and they're listening." Then she turned away from the shadows and walked back into the light. The day of the board presentation arrived like a storm she'd seen coming from miles away but still wasn't entirely ready for. Maya stood in front of the full-length mirror in her small bedroom, adjusting the collar of the only blazer she owned at a thrift store find in deep charcoal that fit almost perfectly after her roommate made a few careful stitches. Her mother sat behind her on the edge of the bed, holding a mug of tea in her frail hands. "They're going to see," her mother said softly. Maya turned. "See what?" "See what I saw the day you rewired the toaster at age 7 because you wanted the bread to pop higher." Maya smiled, nervous. "That toaster caught on fire. But it worked," her mother said with pride. "And so will you." An hour later, she stood in the hallway outside the executive boardroom on the 31st floor. The air was colder up here, somehow. Still, like it didn't belong to the same building she'd cleaned months ago. Rena gave her shoulder a quick squeeze. "You've got this." Luis smiled from behind his laptop. "They don't know it yet, but they're lucky you showed up." Maya nodded, holding tightly to the manila folder in her hand-shard copy backups of everything she planned to present. She didn't trust a projector alone. Not with something this important. The boardroom was large and silent, paneled in pale oak with sleek chrome accents. 12 high-backed chairs formed a half-circle around the central table. Keller sat at the head, flanked by Richard Ellis and a man Maya had never met before, Alan Grisham, chairman of the board. They didn't rise when she entered, but they looked at her, not through her, not past her, at her. "Maya Williams," Keller said, gesturing to the central seat. "Thank you for joining us." Maya sat. The room smelled of expensive cologne and lemon oil. The walls held abstract art she suspected no one had looked at in years. Grisham spoke first. "We've reviewed your tool. The summary was impressive, but today, we want to hear from you directly. Tell us what Lens is, what it does, and why we should care." Maya met his gaze. Calm, even. "Lens is a silent auditor," she began. "It identifies behavioral flaws in AI systems not by what the code says but by what the code does over time. It looks at deviation patterns, recursion traps, and logical inconsistencies that don't produce traditional errors but lead to silent failure." "Oh." She tapped a key on her laptop, and the monitor behind her came to life. "What you see here is a real-time simulation of one of our older AI customer behavior models. To a user, it performs as expected, but Lens flagged a recursive misclassification loophole that, if left unchecked, would slowly bias data outputs over a quarter." She flipped to another slide. "This next capture shows what Lens found 2 weeks ago, API calls embedded in legacy code, redirecting data flow outside standard routing protocols, not illegal, but undisclosed, and potentially catastrophic in the wrong hands." She let that hang in the air. No one spoke. She continued, her voice steady. "I didn't build Lens to expose people. I built it to protect the system, to make sure that as we move forward, we're not just scaling but doing it with integrity." Ellis leaned forward slightly. "And you did all this, on your own?" "I started alone," Maya said, "but others helped refine it. Rena, Luis, Franklin. I had guidance. What mattered was seeing the problem and not looking away." Grisham studied her. "You were cleaning our floors 3 months ago." "Yes," she said, "and fixing what your engineers missed." A flicker of something passed across his face. Surprise, then consideration. Rena stepped in. "Lens is scalable. We can deploy it across multiple systems, internal, client-facing, third-party audits. If we're proactive, it becomes a competitive advantage. If we delay, we risk exposure." Keller finished. "Legal, ethical, operational." Ellis nodded. The recommendation is to move Lens to full implementation. Internal first, then expansion. Grisham looked around the room, then back at Maya. And you, what do you want from this? Maya hesitated, not because she didn't know, but because no one had ever asked. I want a team, she said, not just for Lens, but for what comes after. Tools that catch what humans overlook. Systems that make sure we don't just move fast, but move right. And, Grisham prompted. She lifted her chin. And I want a seat. At the table, wherever the decisions are made. A long silence followed. Then Keller smiled. Well said. Grisham tapped his pen once. Motion to approve full integration of Lens, beginning next quarter. Seconded, said Ellis. All in favor? Hands went up, one by one, no dissent. It was done. As the meeting adjourned, Grisham approached Maya directly. He was taller than he looked from across the table, with sharp eyes and a surprisingly warm smile. I've seen a lot of talent rise through this company, he said, but few who walked in through the service entrance. Maya met his gaze. Sometimes that's the only door open. He chuckled. Well, from here on, any door you want, just knock. He offered a handshake. She took it. Outside, Rena and Luis were waiting. Well? Rena asked. Maya didn't say anything. She just smiled. Luis whooped. I told you, we should all be working for her. Rena rolled her eyes. We already are. As they stepped into the elevator, Maya looked out one last time through the glass windows of the 31st floor. Houston stretched out in all directions, buildings rising, roads curving like veins. She thought of her mother, the mop, the whiteboard. She thought of all the silent systems waiting to be seen. And she knew this was just the beginning. 3 weeks after the board meeting, Lens was quietly rolled out across 3 internal systems. Maya had her own team, now small, but capable. Rena remained her closest ally, transitioning into a more strategic advisory role. Luis led documentation and integrations. Franklin, with his encyclopedic knowledge of legacy code, oversaw compatibility testing. They moved fast, faster than most at Orion thought possible, but with precision. The executive praise came subtly. A forwarded email here, a thank you in a meeting. Even Grisham had walked past Maya's new glass office. Yes, Glasson tapped the door in passing, giving her a nod. Every day brought new challenges. Edge case bugs, user behavior anomalies, whispered inquiries from other departments curious about that auditing thing. And then, the other report arrived. It was late Thursday when Maya found it. Not on her desk, not in her inbox. It was slid beneath her door, in a plain gray folder with no label. Inside, 15 pages, printed, typed in Courier New font. The title on page 1 read, Discrete Implementation of Backdoor Protocols, a Retrospective Analysis. She read the first page, then the second, then all 15 without pause. It wasn't hypothetical. It was a technical confession. The author detailed how, in early Orion prototypes, backdoor access was embedded at the request of an outside strategic partner. The partner wasn't named, but the description was clear. Government adjacent, non-disclosable. The code had been removed in later versions publicly, but Lens had shown otherwise. A small patch remained. Ghost threads. Enough to still offer access, even now. The final paragraph chilled her. If this reaches the wrong desk, it will disappear. If it reaches the right one, it might burn the house down. But the truth matters, Maya, even if no one's asking for it. It was signed only J. Jason? She hadn't seen him in weeks. After their last quiet exchange, he had gone silent. Reassigned, some said, possibly voluntarily. Others whispered that Keller had offered him a transition package, quiet and clean. Maya sat for a long time, staring at the folder. Then she opened her laptop and ran a silent query through Lens on the specific protocols mentioned. They were there, faint, masked under new module labels, but there. She called a meeting with Rena and Luis that night. When she laid the folder on the table, Rena's face tightened. Luis leaned forward, reading faster than he probably should. This is real? He asked. I verified the flags myself, Maya said. It's still active in 1 sandbox node and 2 deprecated client builds. Luis muttered something under his breath. Rena just leaned back, rubbing her forehead. This isn't just an oversight. Rena said. This is someone leaving a door open, on purpose. And now we have to decide, Maya said, what we do with it. Silence hung in the room. The stakes were different now. This wasn't just about bad logic or flawed design. This was willful design for access, possibly illegal, certainly unethical. You could go to Keller, Rena offered. I could, Maya said, but this might go above her, maybe even around her. Luis looked uneasy. You think the board knew? Maya shrugged. I think someone did. Maybe not now, maybe not the current members. But someone, sometime, signed off on it. Rena said nothing for a while. Then, if you push this, it's not just Len's on the line. It's your career, your name, maybe more. Maya nodded. I know. But you're still thinking about it. I'm not thinking, Maya said. I've already decided. She stood, took the folder, and walked out. The next morning, she requested a closed meeting with Keller. It was granted immediately. They met in the same boardroom. Just the two of them this time. Maya laid the folder down without a word. Keller read, page by page. Her expression never changed, but her knuckles whitened slightly on the second read-through. Jason wrote this? She asked at last. I think so, but it doesn't matter who wrote it. It matters that it's true. Keller looked up. And what do you want to happen next? Maya didn't flinch. A formal investigation, independent, immediate patching of all systems, disclosure to affected clients, if applicable. That could collapse trust, trigger regulators. It might, Maya said, but not doing it ensures that when it's discovered and it will be discovered we're complicit. Keller stared at her. Then she reached for her phone. Get Richard Ellis, she said to her assistant. And legal. The next 48 hours were a blur. Keller pulled the board into emergency session. Len's was temporarily restricted from further scans while the findings were verified. Maya was questioned, not aggressively, but thoroughly. Her logs were pulled. Her notes were audited. And then, just as the weight of it threatened to crush her, she received a message. From an internal address she didn't recognize. You're doing what I couldn't. Finish it. J. No reply field. No trace. That night, Maya sat in her apartment, staring at her computer. She thought about systems. Not just the digital kind, but the human ones. The systems of silence, of turning heads, of forgetting, of believing some doors are only for some people. And she whispered, as much to herself as to anyone, I see it now. Then she turned her screen back on and got back to work. The sky over Houston was dark and heavy, thick with the threat of summer rain. Inside Orion's glass-paneled tower, the lights on the 31st floor burned later than usual. Maya sat alone in her office, hands steepled under her chin, watching the city lights flicker like distant warnings. Her screen glowed softly, still displaying the final version of her statement now officially entered into the company's internal ethics review. The formal investigation had been launched, quietly, but not invisibly. Keller had kept her promise. She'd escalated the folder, initiated internal containment protocols, and ordered a code freeze on any affected platforms. A third-party audit firm had been brought in under non-disclosure. Legal was involved. And Maya, now labeled the originator of the discovery, had become both an asset and a liability to almost everyone above her. The mood in the building had changed. Conversations quieted when she entered a room. Emails carried an edge. Rena shielded her when she could. Louise stayed lighthearted but tense. Franklin stopped sending gifts. Maya wasn't surprised. Systems resist being seen. Late that Friday, she received a message from Keller. Come to my office, now. She arrived within minutes. Keller stood by her window, a tablet in hand. Her office, always neat, now had a second monitor displaying rolling data from Len's. They've confirmed it, Keller said without looking up. Every point, every trace. Maya nodded. And? The audit firm wants to continue under silence for 30 days. Then release findings to federal oversight and affected partners. 30 days is a long time. We're preparing statements, security updates, quiet patches, coordinated disclosures. We're trying to avoid panic. Or accountability. Keller turned then, slowly. You think this is about saving face? Maya met her gaze. I think you're trying to balance truth and survival. But the truth doesn't like being balanced. Keller sighed and sat. You've already moved the needle farther than anyone here in a decade, but don't confuse momentum with invincibility. Maya remained still. I'm not trying to be invincible. Then what are you trying to be? Maya paused. Unignorable. For a long beat, Keller didn't speak. Then she nodded. We'll brief the board Monday. I want you there. Bring only facts. I always do, Maya said. She turned to leave. And Maya, Keller added, you're not alone in this. But if anyone pushes back hard, you come to me first. Maya nodded, but her face didn't soften. The walk back to her office felt different this time. Heavier. Like the carpet itself pushed against her steps. She sat down, opened a fresh document, and titled it, Failure Pathway Modeling, What We Almost Missed. She typed for hours. It was past midnight when she heard the door open. Luis stepped in, holding a bag of fast food and 2 cups of something warm. Still alive? He asked. Technically, Maya said. He handed her one of the cups. It was from a Vietnamese cafe near her apartment strong, sweet coffee laced with condensed milk. She smiled in spite of herself. We're building something big here, Luis said after a minute. It's not just code, it's culture, maybe even courage. That scares people. It should. Scared people listen. She looked out the window. Do you think we'll lose control of it, Lenz? Luis sat on the edge of her desk. Only if we give it away. Or if they take it. They can't steal what they don't understand, he said, tapping her temple. This isn't just software, Maya. It's you. The way you see systems. The way you care. That can't be copied. She nodded, sipping the coffee. Thanks. Besides, Luis added, standing to leave, we've got more eyes on us now than ever. Make it count. After he left, Maya opened her messages. Dozens unread. Some congratulatory, some neutral, a few veiled with corporate concern. Then she saw unanimous. Again, just a line of text. The first fire reveals who built with stone. You did good, but they're watching now. No sender, no reply option. Jason, still hiding in the system somewhere? She closed her inbox. The storm finally broke after 2 a.m. thunder rolled across the city like the low rumble of engines in a tunnel. Rain streaked down the windows. Maya worked through the noise, fingers moving with calm certainty. She knew the difference now between exposure and change. Exposure made headlines. Change required staying, speaking again, showing up even after the applause faded and the pressure remained. She opened Lens and made a small update to its dashboard interface she'd been considering since the board meeting. A second mode. Not just detection, but prediction. She called it Sentinel. It wouldn't just find flaws. It would watch for the signs that led to them. Tomorrow, she'd share the idea. Some would panic. Others might resist. But the system, silent and sprawling, would feel it. And slowly, it would begin to change. Sunday came with quiet purpose. Maya arrived at the office before sunrise. The hallway still hushed and empty. Her footsteps echoed on polished floors as she made her way to the R&D lab. Steam curled from her travel mug. It wasn't coffee today, but chamomile. She needed her hands steady. Lens stood open on her screen, Sentinel mode shining like a lighthouse beacon, patrolling, predicting, learning. She ran one last simulation, watching as Sentinel flagged potential failure chains before they formed. The internal metrics improved. Less risk, more transparency, a path forward. On Monday morning, the atmosphere was electric tense, hopeful, and a little wary. Maya's calendar showed a 3-hour block labeled Sentinel Briefing, All Hands. She entered the packed room and found Rena, Luis, Franklin, Andrea Keller, Richard Ellis, and unexpectedly, Jason Monroe. His presence felt like an undercurrent unspoken history between them, complex and raw. Rena nodded at Maya. Luis gave a tense thumbs up. Maya swallowed away uncertainty and began. Thank you for coming, she said. Today, I'm presenting Sentinella Proactive Companion to Lens. She clicked to the first slide, a network diagram lighting up with cascading alerts. Lens finds flaws. Sentinel watches for the conditions that create flaws. Eyes shifted. Jason leaned forward. Essentially, Maya continued, Sentinel analyzes behavioral triggers, unusual data patterns, unpredictable response cascades, resource exhaustion events. When these align below the threshold of outright errors, Sentinel flags them before they trigger production failures. She guided them through early demos, resource spikes during model retraining, code changes with subtle regression drifts, even a flagged legacy API call similar to the backdoor discovery. The room was silent, faces attentive, not smiling but listening. At the end, Keller leaned forward. "This gives us foresight," she murmured. "Not just hindsight," Luis added. "It buys us time. For remediation, communication, integrity." Jason cleared his throat. "It also forces us to ask, who do we trust with this knowledge? How transparent are we prepared to be?" The question rippled through the room. Maya met Jason's gaze. He nodded slightly. It wasn't an agreement, but respect earned. Richard broke the silence. "It will require investment resources, priority, training. But the value is clear. Fewer failures, better compliance, stronger trust." Franklin closed his laptop. "We'll need structure, dedicated Sentinel team, cross-departmental oversight, integration timelines." Keller stood and addressed the room. "I propose formalizing Sentinel as Project Shield. We allocate a team budget and reporting structure. We brief the board tomorrow. We begin internal rollout." Hands went up, approved. Collective relief and tension filled the room. Maya watched it happen. They trusted her, trusted the system she created. And now it was real. Later that morning, after the meeting disbanded, Jason approached her quietly near a window overlooking the atrium. "You did good," he said softly. "Sentinel sounds like what we all needed." She looked at him. "Thank you." He paused. You saved this place. More than code." "I only saw what was there," she replied. He nodded. A moment of understanding. Then he added, "Let me know if you need a partner. I'd like to help." Maya nodded slightly. She didn't have to say anything more. That afternoon, she walked past the janitor's closet. It stood empty now. A quiet reminder of the journey begun from cleaning floors in silence. She didn't look inside. Instead, she kept walking toward her office, toward the future one grounded in transparency, resilience, justice. She opened her door and found a small plant sitting on her desktop, a note attached. "For new roots. From your team." Tears pricked her eyes, not from relief, but gratitude. She touched the soil gently and whispered, "We'll grow well." The building hummed around her, systems alive with purpose, people talking about code and Sentinel, about culture change. But more importantly, she felt it in her bones. Something real had shifted. That evening, walking home beneath early summer stars, Maya thought of her mother's voice. Unignorable. She had set out to be seen. She had built something that mattered. And now she wasn't just unignorable, she was a catalyst. Rain began to fall softly, washing the streets with possibility. And Maya Williams, watching the world shimmer, knew that some systems were meant to be changed from within. Silence had been broken. The echoes of it would build a better future. The city lights of Houston shimmered beneath Maya as she stood on her apartment balcony, rain-drenched pavement reflecting late-night neon. After weeks inside the glass tower, she was home, alone, processing the weight of what had shifted. Sentinel was in motion. Project Shield was greenlit. But tonight, it felt like a beginning, not an end. Inside, her notebook lay open on the kitchen table. She flipped back through pages of diagrams, flagged code segments, and quiet notes. Interspersed were reminders. Call Professor Linton, update community syllabus, talk to Mom about cover letter. She smiled at the fragments a circle completing, but not quite closed. She remembered her mother's words from childhood, painted in warm morning sunlight. Even if you sweep floors, sweep them like you built the building. She had started there. Now she was building. A soft ping on her phone startled her. An email from an anonymous address. Change creates ripples. Keep them steady. No signature, no origin. Anxiety knotted her throat. Yet steadiness was what she felt most. Wednesday morning arrived with clear skies, and her steps into the office felt different, lighter, intentional. She passed Rena, who smiled knowingly. Luis paused with a stack of coffee cups. Franklin waved over code logs on dual monitors. This was now normal, real. At 10 a.m., She joined the weekly Shield stand-up. The team discussed integration with client platforms, legal feedback on disclosure statements, and early feedback from internal users. One of the junior engineers, Naomi, mentioned a flagged issue in a training model update tone that would have failed silently in production. Maya said, "That's exactly why Sentinel exists." She guided Naomi on refining the alert thresholds. Then to the group, "Every alert is a signal not just of a flaw, but of attention. That's the shift we're building." Their eyes met hers knowing, focused, a shared purpose. Later that day, Keller invited Maya to join a lunch meeting with marketing and client relations. The goal: craft a transparency statement to accompany Sentinel's external rollout. The room was polished soft lighting, white tablecloths, streamer slideshows, but under the polished veneer lay nerves. "How much do we say?" one exec asked. "How do we avoid sounding defensive?" Maya listened before speaking. "Honesty isn't defensive, it's trust." She suggested a clear message. Orion is proactively protecting data and clients. She offered to reference the historical context lens and the backdoor to show humility. It would be bold, risky, but genuine. They nodded, visibly relieved. This was sentence by sentence the kind of clarity she'd always valued. By day's end, media drafts quoted her. "Transparency isn't just policy, it's purpose." On her walk home, Maya received a text from her mother. "Proud of you beyond words." She responded with a heart emoji, then paused. Her mother was her anchor, taught her both care and courage. Everything she was building right now was an echo of that love. That evening, she logged back in to update Sentinel's anomaly dashboard. She sent a ping to Franklin. "Update key logs to include pattern visualization." He responded quickly, "On it." Rena pinged her on Slack. "Client feedback positive. Good job." Luis posted a thumbs-up emoji next to his name. Inside the apartment, Maya prepared a simple dinner stir-fry and rice. Afterward, she sat with her notebook and sketched a lesson plan for a STEM workshop she planned for next month. She'd invited a dozen girls from her old neighborhood. She wanted them to see more than coach, wanted them to see themselves shaping it. Her phone buzzed late this time, a forwarded headline. "Orion Systems launches Sentinel. A new era of transparency in tech," quoting her directly. She stared at it, feeling a swell of accomplishment but also humility. This wasn't about a headline. It was about everyday people avoiding silent harm, about systems being honest. As midnight approached, she texted Luis, "Tomorrow. Coffee at 9? He replied, "Always." Then she powered down. On the balcony, she stood again, breathing in the soft night air. Rain had passed. The city breathed in relief and readiness. Echoes of change rippled across the skyline, reflections in glass and steel. She touched the plant on her desk inside the gift from her team and whispered to herself, "Let's keep it steady." Orion had started shifting in a few short months, but the true test of change was sustained momentum, steady ripples, not sudden splashes, and Maya Williams stood ready to keep them moving. Her journey began with a mop and a line of code. Now, it echoed beyond hair across company lines, industry walls, even neighborhoods like hers, and in that steady echo, the promise of something better glimmered. In the dark of night, she let that promise guide her forward. The morning sun bathed Houston in golden light as Maya stepped onto the community center's worn steps. The brick building stood adjacent to the neighborhood playground where she once played, her sneakers scuffed from years ago. Today, she carried two things: a laptop bag and hope. In her pocket, the invitation letter for her first outreach workshop, a STEM event for local girls interested in coding. Inside, the center buzzed with chatter. Bright posters proclaimed, "Code your world," and "You belong here." Tables were set with laptops, snacks, cheerful swag. A dozen girls aged 10 to 15 trickled in with curious faces and nervous smiles. Their parents stood by, excited and protective. Maya took a breath and stepped forward. She smiled at the crowd. "Hey everyone, I'm Maya Williams. Today, we're going to learn that code isn't just for suits, it's for all of us." A few girls giggled. A couple applauded. Her mother, seated in the back row, beamed. They started with icebreaker, each girl naming a tech hero or dream. Some said Elon Musk, others said a YouTuber. One shy girl piped up, "My grandma taught me to fix her phone." Maya smiled. This was the future. Then came the first exercise. Find the bug. A short block of code with an error simple Boolean loop that should have ended but didn't. They worked in pairs, calling Maya over for help. She knelt beside them, finger tracing a line of code. "See? It never breaks. Try adding this." And a chorus of excitement followed when the code ran. Her heart swelled. Later, she spoke about lens and sentinel not in corporate terms, but in real life, how code could hide problems silently, how even trusted systems might fail quietly. The girls listened, eyes wide. "Why do you care?" one asked. Maya knelt to face her. "Because even the strongest buildings can crack without anyone noticing. We build to be strong, but we have to listen for the cracks." The workshop closed with a group photo. Everyone cheering, phones in the air. Maya felt something shift inside. This wasn't just tech outreach. It was part of what she'd always wanted: connection, giving back, building new architectures not just in code, but in community. Back at Orion, Monday had Maya arriving tired but determined. She carried a USB stick containing workshop photos, testimonials, and feedback from parents. She plugged it into Keller's office computer, under the pretense of an update. Later, she passed Keller in the hallway. "I left something in your inbox. It's from the workshop." Keller smiled. "I'm looking forward to seeing it." That evening, she forwarded the files to Richard Ellis and a few board members with a note. "Investment in talent begins here." At the same time, in R&D, Luis and Franklin set up Sentinel modules for a new client integration. They fought through late-night bugs and timeout errors, Maya coaching them through remote screen sharing before heading home. Her mother waited at the doorstep, soup simmering. "Tell me," she said, and Maya did. She told her about the girls, the code, the laughter, the pride. Her mother held her hand. "You built bridges, baby." She nodded. The next morning, Aaliyah Robinson, one of the girls from the workshop, climbed the stairs to Orion's reception, escorted by her mother. They were there for a tour. Aaliyah had asked to meet the coder who taught me bugs are cool. Security buzzed Maya's badge. "Maya Williams is here to see you," said the receptionist. Maya met them at the lobby. When Aaliyah saw her, she ran around her ankles, up her legs, hugging her waist. Maya laughed. "Hey, future engineer." Her mother hugged them both, tears shining in her eyes. Reese, Orion's head of HR, watched nearby, smiling. "This is why we do it," Reese whispered to Keller, who stood next to her. Keller nodded, eyes on Maya, pride radiating. That afternoon, Maya returned to her office and found her inbox flooded. Messages from other centers requesting workshops. One from the city council about a tech mentorship event. A LinkedIn message from Howard University's Career Center. "Would you consider being a guest speaker?" She turned to her desk plant. It leaned toward the window. She whispered, "Looks like we're growing." That night, she and her mother took dinner on the porch. Cicadas hummed. Streetlights flickered. Her mother asked softly, "Is it enough?" Maya draped an arm around her. "It's real." She touched the plant leaning by the window, roots deepening in fresh soil. "And it spreads." Her mother nodded. "Just like you were meant to." In the days that followed, corporate memos praised her outreach as part of Orion's new social impact program. Employees began volunteering. A small fund was allocated for community partnerships, workshops, hackathons, scholarships. Maya's role expanded unofficially. She sat on the social impact committee, but she never forgot why it all mattered. It wasn't for recognition. It was for echoes, ripples in places she'd known, connections she'd once thought impossible. One late evening, she encountered Jason in the parking garage. He was locking his bike. She approached. "You made a difference," he said simply. She looked back. "So did you." He paused. "Want to co-host a session together? I can share code security basics." She hesitated, then smiled. "I'd like that." They walked out together under the streetlights, echoing partnership of code and community, reaching outward from where it all began. Maya sat poised behind the podium in a high-ceilinged auditorium at Howard University. The stage lights glinted off polished wood, spotlighting the seal of her alma mater projected behind her. "Excellence through strength." She could feel the hum of expectancy from the audience, faculty, alumni, students, and families all gathered for a guest lecture on ethics in technology. A soft murmur rippled across the seats as Lori Davenport, the Dean of Computer Science, introduced her. From janitor's badge to boardroom advisor and community leader, Maya Williams embodies the kind of change we hope to inspire. The applause was warm. Maya waited until it faded, inhaled deeply, and began. "Good afternoon. Thank you for welcoming me back." Her voice carried across the room, calm, purposeful. She paused, scanning the faces below. Eager undergraduates, seasoned professors, curious parents. "I want to tell you a story not about success, but about seeing and being seen." She walked through her journey. Her drop from Howard due to family illness and financial hardship, the night spent cleaning floors to support her mother. The chance discovery of a bug no one else caught. She explained Lens and then Sentinel, and how finding hidden flaws in systems wasn't just technical, it was ethical. She shared slides, code diagrams, community photos at the code workshop, the plant on her desk. Each reflects a principle: clarity, connection, growth. She spoke about the backdoor discovery, the other report, and how choices shaped not only code, but culture. When she described asking for independence, not notoriety, a hush fell over the crowd. Midway, she paused. "Howard shaped me, even when I wasn't here. It taught me to question, to persist, to honor both logic and context." She looked at the dean. "And I'm honored to be here today, not just to speak but to listen." A panel followed. Students asked about building a career with integrity, code inequalities, systemic bias. Her reply to one student shimmered. "Transparency isn't about making everything public, it's about making everything accountable. We must design systems that trust the user, not exploit them." After the talk, students lined up. Some shared their own stories of tech careers derailed by doubt, or of overcoming barriers. One young woman pressed a printout into Maya's hands. "Here's my code. Could you review it?" Maya promised she would. Another asked, "Can your team shadow me on Lens?" And a third offered to volunteer at future workshops. Later, in the hallway, author-chronicler photographers snapped images for press releases and departmental newsletters. Maya smiled, feeling the familiar tug of discomfort she'd never sought spotlight. But this time, the attention felt meaningful. Dean Davenport guided her to the exit. "Your words will echo," she said. "Howard's future is brighter with alumni like you." Maya nodded. "I hope this is just beginning." That evening, she returned to Orion and found her inbox filled. LinkedIn requests, invitations to tech podcasts, mentorship programs. A starred email sat at the top, from a senator's office requesting her presence at a national cybersecurity summit. Later, she found Jason waiting by her desk. "Saw you had a full house today," he said. Maya shrugged. "They listened." He smiled. "They'll keep listening if you keep speaking." They spoke quietly about co-hosting local workshops and a podcast series exploring ethical AI. She felt both exhaustion and exhilaration. As she packed to leave, Rena dropped by. "You did Howard proud," she said, "and us, too." Luis followed with flowers for Maya's planta, small succulent labeled Resilience. Maya regarded it thoughtfully. "Resilience," she repeated softly. The weekend beyond came with another community workshop, and then a quiet evening at home. Her mother asked about the day. "It felt full," Maya replied. "Not because I spoke in public, but because so many voices joined in." Her mother smiled. "That is full." As midnight neared, Maya stepped onto her balcony, the summer air warm. She looked at the cityscape lights, windows, countless stories. Her own path had crossed technological frontiers, corporate corridors, and neighborhood hallways. But this evening, she felt something else: responsibility. She touched her phone and opened a new document, title at the top: Ethics in Action, Building the Next Generation of Guardrails. It would be a podcast script, a way to extend her message beyond lecture halls and boardrooms. Her mind reached back to the words her mother had taught her: sweep as if you built the building. Now she spoke and wrote, and taught, and built, and the building was only beginning to stand. Maya stepped back inside, the lights of her apartment soft behind her. Outside, Houston glowed steady, hopeful, and somewhere in the reflection of those skyscrapers, the echo of her story carried on. Maya stepped into the federal courthouse auditorium with a calm focus, the weight of the moment resting on her shoulders. She had been invited to testify before the Senate Subcommittee on Technology and Ethics, a direct result of the Sentinel Initiative and the subsequent disclosures. Reporters, government officials, industry representatives, and advocates gathered, filling the room with a tense anticipation she recognized all too well. She took her seat at the witness table, her hands resting on a stack of documents reviewed and redacted by Orion's legal team. Behind her sat Keller, Richard Ellis, and company counsel, silent pillars of support. Across the room, senators in crisp suits flipped through agenda folders, cameras focused in. Her heart beat in steady rhythm. "Miss Williams," began Senator Davenport, "no relation to Howard's dean, thank you for being here. Your work at Orion Systems has prompted a broader conversation about corporate responsibility. We look forward to your testimony." Maya nodded and began without hesitating. "Thank you, Senator. I'm here because of Sentinel, a diagnostic system designed to catch silent failures in AI models. In my role, I uncovered undisclosed backdoor protocols in legacy code risks that could undermine user privacy and data integrity." She laid out her timeline: the discovery, the internal report, the audit, and the controlled disclosures. She named Lens and Sentinel, explaining their functions: Lens to detect, Sentinel to predict. Her voice remained steady, deliberate, carrying the quiet power of facts. A senator interrupted. "Was Orion Systems aware of these protocols before your audits?" "Not in a documented or transparent way," Maya replied. "The code existed, but it was buried. The company took immediate action upon discovery." Another senator leaned forward. "You're implying that executives could have known but didn't disclose. Why?" Maya paused. "Organizations sometimes overlook legacy code. The risk is in assuming nothing harmful exists. The backdoors were placed long ago by external partners not disclosed. Once we discovered them, we couldn't ignore them." A murmur passed through the room. Senator Davenport queried, "Miss Williams, what recommendations do you have to prevent future risks?" Maya flipped to her prepared slide. "First, diagnostic audits like Lens and Sentinel should be standard during mergers, code integration, and legacy updates. Second, transparency to external oversight bodies must be mandatory when risks are identified. Third, public companies should publish annual ethical AI compliance reports." She answered follow-up questions professionally. About oversight, liabilities, external audits, and user trust. She emphasized that silence breeds vulnerability. There were nods. Some were critical, some skeptical, but all engaged. At the end, the committee adjourned her testimony and offered closing remarks. Senator Davenport concluded, "Your testimony will help shape legislation on AI ethics, accountability, and transparency." "Thank you, Miss Williams." Outside, reporter microphones captured her words. Cameras flashed. Maya walked down the row of reporters toward the media staging area. Press asked quick questions. Was corporate America ready? Would she leave Orion? How would lawmakers respond? Backlit by a member of the press, Maya paused and spoke clearly. "I'm here because systems fail quietly. We need to make them speak. And that's worth fighting for." That evening, after the adrenaline faded, she returned home. Her apartment felt small, arrestingly intimate after the enormity of the day. Her mother waited with 2 cups of herbal tea. "You were brilliant," her mother said. "You gave them something to think about." Maya exhaled. It was bigger than the room. "I hope they really listen." They drank tea in silence until Maya's phone buzzed with notification headlines praising her testimony, live coverage, tech journals, social media. Louise texted, "Proud of you. Let's celebrate next week?" Maya smiled and replied yes. She sat alone afterward, typing an email to her team at Orion. "We did this because we listened. Let's keep listening." The next morning, she found a letter on her desk. It was from Howard University, formal invitation. "Join our board of advisors for ethics in technology." Below, LinkedIn messages kept coming. Invitations to speak at global forums. Offers to consult. She looked at her reflection in the frosted glass walls. The woman staring back had swept floors, fixed code, built tools, faced scrutiny, and now stood at the edge of systemic change. She breathed, then she picked up her pen and added a note to her to-do list. Draft first ethics compliance roadmap for Orion. Outside, the city woke. Cars, buses, distant horns. On the sparkle of rain-slicked streets, she saw moved momentum. Maya Williams gathered her strength. The tide had turned, and this time, she would help steer it. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Orion's Innovation Wing as Maya stepped into her new office renamed the Ethics and Resilience Lab. It wasn't a glass cube anymore, but a collaborative space. Whiteboards lining 2 walls, modular desks, plants sprouting in every corner. The plant from her desk office stood prominently on a wooden shelf, blooming, its roots steady. Underneath, a plaque read, "Resilience grows roots." Maya tapped her badge and walked toward a group gathered around a central table. Rena, Luis, Franklin, Naomi, and 2 new hires engineers from the compliance and legal teams. They were assembling what Maya had proposed yesterday, the first Orion Ethics Compliance Roadmap. "Good morning," she began, voice warm. "We're building the blueprint that makes Sentinel standard, Lens standard, and accountability baked into code reviews company-wide." Rena nodded. "Our immediate goal, deploy Sentinel coverage to 70% of core systems this quarter." She turned to Naomi. "You'll lead patch cycle integration, working with deployment squads." Naomi smiled and grabbed her laptop. Luis piped in with a grin. "I'll head up documentation and training, create modules for engineers, security teams, and management." Franklin added, "I'll monitor legacy modules for anomalies as Sentinel comes online. We check every system that's been updated in the past 5 years. 2 new faces, Claire from legal and Marcus from risk." Claire cleared her throat. "We'll draft the annual ethics report and compliance checklists. Quarterly oversight to regulators and policies for client transparency." Maya raised her hand. "And I'll represent the team at leadership stand-ups, board reviews, and the Senate subcommittee follow-up meeting next month." They broke into smaller groups, whiteboards alive with sticky notes. Sentinel expansion, compliance manual, training sessions, audit report templates, client communication plan, community partnership strategy. The buzz wasn't frantic, it was purposeful. Around midday, Maya took a walk through the building, reflecting on the transformation. What once was a towering structure of siloed teams now bustled with collaboration. Posters advertising volunteer days displayed smiling faces in neighborhoods. A digital banner on the atrium screen read, "Integrity in action, safety through transparency." At her old desk space, she lingered. The badge locker was now unused. Boots squeaked against the carpet where the mop cart once rolled. Everything had changed, not erasing the past, but building on it. Back in the ethics lab, Keller walked in quietly and watched her team at work. Maya caught her eye and gestured for her to join the group. Keller smiled and joined the brainstorm. "I'd like to propose adding a stakeholder engagement pillar," she said. "We communicate with clients, regulators, and communities like Howard and local centers. We can extend our message as leaders, not just followers." Maya nodded. "Yes, let's designate community liaisons. Naomi will partner with Howard again. And I'll speak at the Senate follow-up. I can mention strategic outreach." Luis raised his hand. "I've been talking with the education department. There's interest in our workshop model across the state." "We can pilot," Keller said. "Show that ethics in tech isn't talk, it's involvement." They sketched out additional notes. Community pilot SEPT, state, level engagement, public-facing transparency portal. Keller watched them, satisfaction in her eyes. Later that afternoon, Maya returned to her office and sat with a letter addressed to her. It was from Howard University's Office of African American Student Affairs. They invited her to join a mentorship circle for young women in STEM, starting this fall. She ran her finger over the envelope. She accepted, immediately. That evening, she met Jason in a small conference room lined with whiteboards. They were co-hosting a pilot session for internal security training, using examples from Lens and Sentinel. Jason stood at the front, as she walked in. "Right on time," he said. "Ready?" "Always," she replied with a smile. They presented scenarios: code with hidden logic gates, minor unsecured endpoints, recursive loop risks. Engineers watched on Zoom and in person. Jason led the tech demo. Maya explained ethical implications. They circulated a patch sequence live watching. Sentinel detect the anomaly before it caused drift. At the end, the co-hosting model had them field questions. One young engineer asked, "What if we miss something? What's our backup?" Maya responded, "We don't fail silently anymore. Sentinel flags it. But if we do fail, we report it. That's the cultural shift. Accountability even when it hurts." Jason looked at her with pride. After the session, they debriefed over coffee. He said, "We're doing more than just security now." She nodded. "We're doing responsibility." He raised his cup silently in agreement. The next day brought an urgent email. The Senate follow-up meeting had been scheduled for next month. Maya would join as a representative expert. She forwarded the news to Keller, who replied, "A milestone. They'll listen again." Later, Maya spread out her worksheets on community events, client outreach, and legal touchpoints. Her phone buzzed. It was Naomi, texting a photo from the Community Centera banner reading, "Code your ethics," with smiling students underneath. Maya's eyes brimmed. She texted back, "Perfect." That evening at home, she sat on the porch with her mother. Her mother asked, "Do you ever feel overwhelmed?" Maya took her mother's hand. "Sometimes, but not alone. We're building systems whose weight we can carry together." Her mother squeezed her hand. "That sounds like home." Maya leaned back, looking at the night sky. Houston's lights stretched across neighborhoods and skyscrapers alike. Programs launched, publics engaged, teams aligned. What began with a mop, a glitch, and a spark of courage had grown into rippling structures: culture, trust, community, oversight. She thought of the plant on her shelf, the succulent, labeled resilience. It had taken root despite the odds. The community center, the Senate, the audit lab, Howard. She whispered to herself, "We build bridges, then walk across them too." Inside, systems hummed. Outside, tomorrow awaited. And she smiled, ready for what the next code would bring. The office was quiet as Maya arrived early Monday morning. The lights were dimmed, and most desks were empty, just the hum of systems waking up. She passed the Ethics and Resilience Lab and paused at its glass door, watching steam rise from her travel mug as she walked in. Today wasn't another planning session. Today was the day Sentinel would go public. By 8:30, the room was full. Keller, Ellis, Rena, Luis, Franklin, Claire, Marcus, Naomi and press liaison Tanya stood around the central conference table. A live stream setup occupied one corner. 2 cameras pointed toward Maya's seat. "This is it," Keller said softly. "Public announcement in 2 hours." Maya took a breath and looked around. These faces had been there from the start. Building outcome from tension, clarity from hidden flaws. She caught Rena's nod and turned to Keller. "I'm ready." They began with internal rehearsals, each speaking segment practiced twice. Keller opening, Maya presenting Sentinel, Claire on compliance, Ellis on client rollout. Every pause, every transition was polished. After 4 runs, the team was synced, not rehearsed but connected. At 10 a.m., cable crews arrived. Chat about AO standards, release pages, support lines, and Q&A protocols filled the room. Excel spreadsheets, logos, hyperlinks, all signs of preparation. But beneath it lay trust, a team unified by purpose, not just procedure. At noon, cameras rolled. Keller introduced the initiative, Orion's Sentinel program, ethical AI for every user. They highlighted Lens's history, the remediation process, the community integration roadmap, and the transparent public reporting schedule. Then Keller invited Maya to speak. Maya advanced to the podium. She pressed a button and Sentinel's dashboard lit behind her. Real-time monitoring charts, flags, predictive alerts, open-source transparency portal metrics. "Today, we launch Sentinel externally," she began, voice steady and strong. "Not because we expect systems to fail, but because we expect integrity to matter more than silence." Her eyes scanned live chat questions. "How does it protect me? What's next? Is this standard or unique? She answered each. About client data, code pipelines, engineering culture, legal compliance. She named Orion's error reporting portal Open Code, where clients, partners, and citizens could report anomalies. She mentioned the programming workshops, the ethical roadmap, and how Howard and the Senate's guidance shaped the initiative. When she concluded, the room erupted into applause from cameras, from observers, from her team. Keller hugged her. Rena grinned. Even Luis's voice cracked a bit. Outside, press cameras captured her walking back through the lobby. A CNN banner broadcasted her opening remarks. She waved but didn't smile too big. This was not the end, just a new chapter. Late afternoon, Maya returned to her office. Her inbox overflowed. Emails from clients, industry associations, nonprofits, universities. Her phone buzzed with calendar invites to podcasts, conferences, ethics panels. Her mother called. Saw it. You were clear. Proud. Asterisk. Maya closed her eyes, letting the words sink. Just then, Jason slipped in. He didn't knock, but he didn't have to. Congratulations, he said carefully. Today was believable. Maya offered him a smile, heart pounding at new familiarity. Thank you. He regarded the plant shelf. You know, some people call that spotlight liability. Maya tilted her head. Maybe, but transparency is what turns liability into credibility. He nodded, thoughtful. I'm glad I stayed. He glanced at her. What's next? She paused, mapping possibilities from internal audits to statewide workshops. Finding blind spots before they find themselves, she said. Building the bridges we start walking. Jason smiled. Count me in. They shook hands. That night, in the privacy of her apartment, Maya updated her public-facing report on Orion's site. She added new community metrics and a timeline for workshops in underserved neighborhoods. She embedded links to the ethics, roadmap, and external audits. She titled it, From Correction to Connection. As she hit publish, a notification arrived. Senator Davenport just shared Sentinel announcement on Senate floor. This ripple had reached a new pond. Maya sat back on the couch, feeling tired but ignited. She texted her team, We did it. Now let's keep doing it. Responses flooded in. Her mother joined her on the couch. The two of them watched CNN replays of the launch. Together, they absorbed every frame. Maya whispered, We're not done. Her mother squeezed her hand. I know. It's just beautiful. Outside, Houston's skyline gleamed under night sky, lights like distant beacons of possibility. Maya Williams closed her laptop, eyes bright with promise. Sentinels would watch, bridges would span, systems would speak, and she would stand at every crossroads, ready, because seeing wasn't enough. Being seen and then doing was everything. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows of the Houston Innovation Hub, where Maya stood before a crowded room of industry leaders, regulators, educators, and community advocates. A banner overhead read, Sentinel 2.0 Launch and Global Roundtable, Building Ethical AI. It was the culmination of her journey from janitor to changemaker. But as she stood behind the podium, she felt something deeper, a calling to build something enduring. She welcomed the audience. Today, we launch Sentinel 2.0, a platform not only for runtime oversight, but for cross-industry collaboration. We're opening our APIs, sharing best practices, and inviting external audits. That's what ethical AI requires. 10. The first panel featured Howard University professors discussing transparency frameworks. Maya watched them nod, seeing her own academic roots reflected in their eyes. Next, representatives from a nonprofit on algorithmic fairness described how Sentinel's open portal could revolutionize accountability. The energy in the room pulsed. This wasn't a product launch, it was a movement. Afterward, Maya walked to the innovation showcase. There, Rena demonstrated an improved Sentinel dashboard with community metric students trained, workshops held, code audits completed. Luis and Franklin guided visitors through interactive demos, uploading sample code, triggering simulated silent failures, and watching Sentinel flag them in real time. Naomi described client integration successes, reduced issue resolution times, improved compliance feedback, and positive audit results. Journalists hovered, capturing quotes. One asked Maya, What keeps you up at night now? She paused, then replied, not the flaw-sour ability to remain vigilant when success feels enough. That afternoon, Keller approached Maya as the crowd thinned. They're calling this Houston Declaration for Ethical AI. You've led something bigger than Orion. Maya felt both pride and the weight of responsibility. Jason joined them. He placed a hand on Maya's shoulder. You should restore step away, even. Maya shook her head. There's more to do. Buildings hold up when foundations are laid. We've laid ours. Now we build the floors above. He met her eyes. Then let me help lay them. She smiled. I'd like that. Later, she stepped outside into the evening air. A small crowd followed her to the plaza where a dedication was being held. A metal plaque embedded in polished stone reading, Sentinel Garden, where systems grow responsibly. Below were bricks engraved with names. First workshop students, Orion volunteers, community mentors. One brick bore her mother's name, Evelyn Williams, whose strength planted roots. Maya's mother stood proudly beside her. She led Maya to the plaque, and they both placed handprintures in clean sealant, her mother's in the damp concrete below. Huan Trong Rorn Ra drumming rhythms signaled community celebration as local musicians and food vendors joined the gathering. Maya hugged her mother, then turned to face everyone. She raised a hand. Today, we don't just celebrate technology. We celebrate culture, community, accountability. She gestured to the plaque, then to the hub's glass walls glowing with progress and memory. Any building stands stronger on shared foundations, not walls. Together, we built walls of trust, floors of transparency, and many open doors. Applause rose. Maya scanned faces students from past workshops, Orion engineers, regulators, city officials, media. She saw Jason chatting with youth volunteers. She saw Keller conversing deeply with policy advocates. She saw Luis giving high fives to excited teenagers. That night, as the crowd dispersed, Maya walked home beneath strings of lights lining the plaza. Houston felt alive, connected, hopeful. At her front door, she paused and looked back at the lit windows of the Innovation Hub. Inside, Sentinel monitors glowed softly. Plants lined collaboration spaces. People lingered. She whispered, "Thanks for listening." Inside, her mother waited with chamomile tea. They sat communicating without words, the hush comfortable, profound. Later, on her desk, Maya placed a handwritten note next to the plant. Roots deep. Reach far. She opened a blank document. Chapter 1, The Next Generation. It was empty for now. Outside, crickets sang, and inside, Maya Williams slept, ready for dawn.